It has been a while since you've heard from me in relation to the OECS Assembly. For those who are just learning about the Assembly, this is an organ of the OECS, that is the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States. As you're aware, there's a treaty called the Treaty of Bastille, and the revised Treaty of Bastille has made provision for the functioning of an assembly. The assembly is similar to a parliament. The members of the assembly are constituted as follows: 5 members from each of the 6 independent states. These 5 members must all be elected members of their respective parliaments. So, for example, in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, this must be 5 elected members of parliament. And according to the proportion numbers on both sides, on the opposition and the government side. So, on the government side, there will be 3 elected members. On the opposition side, there will be 2 elected members. At the assembly, there is no opposition. The assembly is an assembly of states, so that both sides of the house represent St. Vincent and the Grenadines. So that will be the same position as it will be in Dominica, St. Lucia, Grenada, Antigua and Barbuda, St. Kitts and Nevis, and St. Lucia. Those are the 6 independent states that have 5 elected members. For those states that are not independent, the states do have, for example, the premier or the chief minister, the respective leaders of the opposition, and 1 other member, because those associated states have representation of 3 members to the assembly. The assembly deals with matters centering around certain areas that the OECS Economic Union has under its suzerainty. So we look at issues dealing with transportation, maritime areas, commerce, and immigration. Since the inauguration of the Assembly in August 2012, I've been most fortunate to have been elected unopposed as Speaker of the OECS Assembly. I was re-elected again in 2016, and now we go back for this session, which will take place on Monday the 17th of June in Antigua and Barbuda. Why Antigua and Barbuda? Under the rules, Antigua and Barbuda, St. John's, has been made the seat of the Assembly. The Assembly is free to move to other countries, provided that we have all the mechanisms to permit the Assembly to meet, and as well the technology to permit the meeting. You can do it by technology, but the technology is just growing in these parts to permit that sort of, the Skype falls in and out every now and then, teleconference or Zoom, that will also have its issues. So at the moment, the technology does not permit the council to meet, where each party or each set of assembly members would meet in their chamber, and so we have an assembly by Skype. The technology does not permit that, so Antigua is a permanent seat of the assembly. We'll be meeting there, and we use the assembly hall of in St. John's, Antigua, and we have the good fortune of the offices of the clerk who assist and support our clerk. We do have a clerk, and also there is an elected deputy speaker who has been elected unopposed since the inauguration in August of 2012. Before we meet, an agenda has to be prepared. The agenda is prepared by the assembly staff in consultation with the commissioners. The commissioners are ambassadors who have been accredited to the OECS. Each country has a commissioner, and the commissioner will interface with the clerk, and who will then have that information, which will be taken to the Director General, who will look at the information, he will examine the information, and liaise with the head of the authority. So between the Prime Minister, the Director General of the OECS, the commissioners, the clerk, and the speaker, of course, we examine what the order paper is likely to comprise, what items will be on the order paper. And then that order paper is sent by saving gram to all of the heads of delegations. and they will then liaise with the leaders of the opposition in the respective territories, so we can then have what we call the attendance list to make sure that we do have a quorum before the meeting. And on the order paper, we will have the usual things you have in a parliament: adoption of the Hansard and any legislation. So far, we have done a massive piece of legislation dealing with the Eastern Caribbean Civil Aviation Authority. And we are looking at least 3 other pieces of legislation, which would then be harmonized and common legislation that touches and concern the OECS. So like I said, the Civil Aviation Authority is an authority of the OECS. It's an authority that is derives its function and powers under the treaty. So whatever we look at, it is then sent to our respective parliaments for implementation, passing and implementation in respective parliaments and legislatures. Last time we were fortunate to examine what was the situation concerning the issues relating to climate change. So what they try to do is to look at issues that are of common interest of all the member states. What is very important is that at this particular time in the development of the OECS, we have to ensure that we create institutions, and the function of those institutions would aid and assist the existing parliaments and the existing ministries, because there's a Council of Economic Ministers, there's the Monetary Council, the Council of Health Ministers, and agricultural ministers that will be working on certain things, now because of climate change and the emerging blue economy. They'll be looking at those issues of the common interests. We also met and we dealt with the issue of how would we travel in the OECS. Would you require passports? Would you require evidence of citizenship? What would you require to travel within the OECS so that it will make for ease of movement of persons and movement of goods? We're looking at issues relating to the maritime areas, because we are literally a sea apart from each other, just a few miles. And it is indeed, when you read the documentation, and that documentation is available, the Hansard is available in St. Lucia, and we are looking at putting more matters in the research and publication division of the website of the OECS, so that you would have easier access, online access to the information that concerns the OECS Assembly. We hope to be able to continue to do this work. It is very essential and important work for the Assembly to be meeting, because we look around the rest of the regions where there are regional groupings, and the successes of those regional groupings, their weaknesses, and the possibilities that exist to assist and aid in coming to collective decisions, and decisions that would necessarily impact for generations to come. So that's what we are busy doing now at the OECS Assembly. We are indeed grateful to have a very competent and dedicated staff. It requires a lot of dedication to do this work, but it is work when once you're charged with it, it is your responsibility to ensure that it is done with competence and professionalism, and of course for the benefit of the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States. Thank you.